meeting is being recorded.
Okay, cool.
Good afternoon. It's Andy. It's the 28th of December. 2P's in the podcast. Do you like our new little logo? With author Timothy Spearman and Andy Peacher from the UK. I should know my name, shouldn't I, by now? We might have George popping in. George Foynd, he's a good old friend from Canada on this festive religious weekend. Yeah, go ahead, Tim. What are we going to have a little chat about?
Right. Well, I went to do my higher education, my postgraduate work in England. So I was studying at Warwick University, and I was living in Leamington Spa for most of the time and commuting to the campus, which was in Coventry. And so I hitchhiked. There was always someone who'd stop for the students, and we'd pile in and they'd take us to the campus. And so one day I met this homeless bloke. I can't remember his name, but he was a nice enough fellow. So when I met him, I got a feeling that maybe he needed some clothes. So I said, well, why don't you come back to my place and get cleaned up? You can wash, and I'll give you a fresh pair of undies. And so he came back and washed up, and I gave him what I promised. And then I thought, what the heck? I'm going to a dinner party hosted by a Canadian fellow on the campus. I don't know who's coming. And apparently they don't either, because I'm bringing someone that wasn't invited. So I brought him along. And when I arrived at this dinner party, the table was, well, once we sat down, the table was full. I was sitting next to him, and he was sitting next to this English couple. And a couple of the girls that were invited were smiling with beaming smiles at me, because I think they knew what I was up to. I mean, yeah, sure, I was being provocative. Yeah, sure, I was being impertinent. And yeah, it was rude to invite an uninvited guest without permission. True. But my buddy that invited me was Canadian, and I thought similar temperament to me, where he just didn't give a shit. And I think that is his true nature. He just doesn't give a shit. But anyway, our friend, the homeless fellow I brought, started telling all these stories, and he kept the table entertained, I hope, all dinner long with his stories. And most of the stories were about him and his best friend, Cy. And occasionally he'd look over at me and call me Cy. So I wasn't his best friend, but I guess for that night I was. I reminded him of Cy. I assume that's short for Simon. Anyway, I saw this video recently, actually a series of videos recently about homeless people. And they were, coming in where they were not welcome, wearing raggedy clothes. And this one woman came to a wedding dressed in rags, and wealthy guests and the family of the bride were not impressed. And so they ordered security to escort her out. And the poor woman was distraught because she had come to attend her son's wedding. And she said, "Look, I just wanted to wish my son a good wedding and greet him and give him a hug, please." No, the guards weren't having it. So one of the wedding guests saw what was happening and he was appalled, and he came up to the groom and he said, "What the hell are you doing? That's your mother. How dare you? You'd reject your own mother at your wedding? What kind of a groom, what kind of a husband are you going to make when you don't even have loyalty and devotion to your own mother, the woman who sacrificed her life so that you could have one? I don't want to be here. I want to go. I don't want to celebrate your wedding. What kind of a person are you?" So at this point, the groom recognized his mistake and he ran outside, chased after his mother, fell down on his knees and begged her to forgive him. And yeah, he realized this is the woman who did knitting and made clothes to sell so that she could make enough money to provide for him. She was, I think it was a widow left destitute, and this is the only way she could earn money to give him a life. And of course, all of this work that she did helped him. It fed him, clothed him, it sent him to school, all of these things. So he came in and he told the story of all the sacrifices mother had made on his behalf. And he said, "She's staying, and if you don't agree, I'm not staying. That's my ultimatum. This woman is as welcome as I am. If she's not welcome, I'm not welcome, and I'm leaving." And so that put the whole thing, set the whole record straight. The wedding proceeded, God only knows, I guess a miracle, and he got married with his mother as a honored guest. Another video, Andy, which is seasonal as a story goes, was this woman who is destitute, who filled her rucksack with stolen bread at a bakery, these stolen buns, packed the bag with stolen buns from the bakery. The owner was furious, chased her down the sidewalk, screaming, "Thief, stop that thief, catch that thief." And so she fell down in her flight, and all these buns rolled out onto the sidewalk. And the poor thing was begging him, "Please, please, I'm not a bad person. I was just," and she was trying to explain her circumstances. And he said, "No, no, you are a thief. People like you don't belong here. You're not getting away with this." And then the security came and the police followed. And so finally, one of the police constables sat down next to her and said, "Ma'am, why did you steal the bread?" She said, "I'm not a bad person, but I'm a widow and my 4 children haven't eaten in 2 days. I had no choice. I was at the end of my rope. I had no other options available to me, so I had to do something. We're all desperate for food. We need to eat." So the officer said, "Okay." He led her to the back seat of the police car. He says, "You stay here. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back." She had no idea what he was doing. And he came back after consulting with some of his fellow officers at a nearby squad car. In a short time, these officers all came carrying boxes filled with food, enough food to last for four people for or five people for 3 months. So, what I thought about it was cancel the police. Why? They're not all bad. I mean, clearly these cops are good Samaritan types. Um,
Well, apart from one mistake, they could have picked up the bread and give her the bread as well, because they couldn't sell the bread once it had rolled down the street.
yeah, right.
No, but you've got the point, and the same with the homeless guy that you met, the hitchhiker.
Yeah,
Even if you couldn't have smuggled him in, you
yeah,
probably would have made sure he'd got some food afterwards anyway. That is what people are missing this day and age. To help somebody else out doesn't necessarily have to cost you anything but a few moments of your time.
yeah. Well, at that dinner party, the couple that were sitting next to him complained. I don't know what they said. They could have said he smelled or he was dirty. He didn't smell. I sat right next to him. There wasn't an odor, nothing. He was fine. And he wasn't dirty. He was pretty well kept. I mean, he was clean shaven. And yeah, okay, his hair wasn't combed, but neither is mine. So, he looked
Mm.
fine. He was fine. He was pleasant. He was entertaining. He was very friendly and respectful. What's the problem? They're the problem, not him. They're just complainers, haters, whiners, whatever. This was no problem. And so my Canadian friend was only a little bit put out, not because he cared. Like me, he didn't give a shit. He complained because they complain. Why? Because they're whiners, complainers. People are selfish and only think of themselves, and a little bit of discomfort because there's an extra person at the meal table. I mean, big deal. What's the problem? What can you do, Andy?
I've been one of them homeless persons when I was younger. In the end, a bit like the lady with the bread, I tried my best to get welfare to go and find food. And in the end, I just went and thought, "Hey, if I'm going to get into trouble, I'm going to do it in style." I sat in an Indian restaurant. I had about 10 courses, 10 bottles of wine, and then I got arrested. And I only had to pay for the meal because the judge felt sorry for me. He just said, pay the meal, over time, and all's forgotten. So that's the moral of that story.
So all you had to do was pay for the different
The-
courses of food that you ordered at the restaurant.
yeah, so they didn't have a loss. And that
Okay.
was in Torquay and Devon, that was.
Ah,
I mean, the food was pretty rubbish, to be fair, but when you're hungry, you'd eat from a bin, I think.
well, I love Indian food, so I don't know. I would have been happy to, if I was hungry like that, I'd be happy to have Indian
I think I
food.
had a chicken korma. It wasn't nothing special in them days because I didn't really, when I was younger, I didn't like Indian food. So I just had the korma, the naan bread, the pila rice, the ice cream, and soups. But nowadays, I can eat a bolty or I'm not quite vindaloo yet. I can eat a hot one, but not.
Chicken korma is delicious. I love it.
It is if it's made correctly, yeah. Because some restaurants they vary in the taste, but
Mm-hmm.
I would say the more coconutty it is, the better.
Yeah. So you got any stories like those?
No, but generally this time of year, it doesn't help or hurt people to help others. You know, giving them a bit of their food if they don't want it all. Save a little bag for the homeless. Let them sleep in your shed if they're tired. There's nothing wrong with that. But the trouble is, we're all, not all of us, this our countries are. If it doesn't tick the box correctly, then it's no good. It's not in our comfort zone. Let's not. But I would if someone was homeless. I'd bring them in, give them a meal, let them have a wash. If I had a shed, let them sleep in the shed on the mattress, until they get themselves sorted out. Of course, if
Yeah,
I had a spare bedroom, that'd be even better, wouldn't it? But yeah,
yeah. When I
there's,
was in when I
there's,
was in Florida, 2006, after returning from Korea, I was trying to get a job at a local university in, of all places, Melbourne, Florida. And so I was waiting while they did a background check on my grades and everything. And while I was waiting, I was working at a labor hall. And I met this guy named with the nickname Chisel. He ran this labor hall. And his office was in a trailer, and everyone came in the morning and he'd give them their work order and off they went. And I had different jobs I was doing, all labor oriented. And he knew I was from Canada, so I didn't have a work permit. So he used his brother-in-law's ID somehow and got me the work permit, got me like a social security number for the US, and I was using that and getting paid. And the pay was not great, but it was good enough to keep me going, pay for my beach house, buy whatever I needed. And I ended up buying a bicycle while I was down there to get around. And I'd lock it up at the shop before going off to the work detail for that day. One of the places was a newspaper, and I was putting the papers together and throwing them in the hopper, and then they'd get into a pile, and that would automatically get tied, and there'd be a big stack of newspapers. Uh, I was hoping that while I was there working at the paper, I could apply for a job in the front, um, you know, a reporter or something. I did, I applied, but I guess they weren't impressed that I was working in the back as a guy assembling the newspaper, so they didn't even look at my resume. They just basically threw it in the garbage. But anyway, I met this homeless guy named Mitch, and he was like an amateur comedian. He would sometimes do a comedy gig at a local comedy bar. And I never saw his routine, but I had to listen to his jokes. But he was homeless. He was living in his aunt's shed most of the time. And I met him and got to know him. We would find abandoned houses. I think military would have been there for some time and then they just move on and they just leave the house completely abandoned. And so we'd check these places out and there'd be dishes and cutlery and all kinds of items in the house. So since it was abandoned and there was no problem, I helped myself to the cutlery. We had a couple of knapsacks. We just put everything in the knapsacks, plates, dishes, cutlery, whatever we could find, and took it back to my beach house. So I put the dishes and the cutlery in the shelves in my beach house, and everything I needed to prepare food was there. I just needed to do a grocery shop, and that's it. My homeless friend was getting tickets for food. Social services gives you these voucher tickets, and you present them at the food bank, and they'll give you whatever food that voucher is good for. And he was managing with these food voucher tickets. I didn't need that. I mean, I had some money. I could buy my own food at the grocery store. And sometimes he'd come shopping with me, this guy. So I let him stay with me for a few days. And then I met another guy at the job, temporary job place that I've been talking about, the labor hall. And he was an ex-con, and he, I don't know what his living arrangements were. I let him stay with me at the beach house for a few nights. He wanted to stay, and I finally told him, sorry, you got to go. I had a little bit of a struggle getting him to move out. The guy in the beach house next to me complained. The landlady wasn't too pleased. I said, oh, he's just a guy I work with at the labor hall. I don't know that he has a place to stay, so I just let him stay with me for a couple of nights. Well, she said, you could have asked me. And I said, yeah, but I didn't see the harm in it. Whatever. Anyway, I wasn't there for very much longer. My effort to find a job down in Florida didn't pan out, so I just headed back to Toronto. And the bus station in Toronto is right next to that channel, the building that I ended up having a radio show in for a couple of years, and that's where I met George Freund. And that's where we filmed the Shakespeare film, the film about the Shakespeare authorship, The Lunatic Lover and the Poet. We filmed it at that channel, and that's where we did the radio show, the radio play for Titanic, the Ship of Fools. Remember that one, Andy?
Yeah, it took a few hours to put it together.
Yeah, we had to have the sound tech do a cleanup of the sound because it wasn't quite perfect, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. These days it's a lot easier, but it took days and weeks. But just on the homeless, while we're on that theme, in the UK this Christmas,
Yeah.
hundreds use homeless shelters in Birmingham school. Then in the area of Bristol, a Muslim group spread Christmas cheer to the Bristol homeless. So the people do care. Edinburgh teenager, he busked in the street of Edinburgh and donated all his money to feed the homeless at Christmas. So there is some good cheer out there, not much. But one poor guy, his name was Paul. He was sit freezing a shoppers by presents in Wimbledon Shopping Centre, London. And he said the only gift he ever wanted for the night was a bed. But people kept walking by him and spitting at him and not giving him anything. And he was so scared, he didn't want to be alone at Christmas. So that's a shame, really. But they're the news hitting the headlines for the homeless. At the moment, I mean, I've been homeless purely because I was moving about the country. I just found it fun, when it was warm in the days. It was warm, you could put your thumb out, you go to the next city, put your thumb out again, and you're in another city. These days, you can't trust anybody, you know.
Yeah. I remember I was in King's Cross in London when I was doing my university degree. I think it was my master's degree. And my buddy came over from Canada. So we decided to have a little adventure down in London. So we had like canned food and we'd eat a can of beans with some bread or whatever on the steps somewhere, and people would go by assuming we were homeless or something. But there was this hotel or a motel more like, and in King's Cross, and we thought we'd save money. So he went in to get one room, and I climbed up the outside of the hotel onto the roof, and he let me in through the window. So we paid for a single room for two, and stayed the night there. And when we left, we came running down the stairs and out the door before they could object.
That's
We met.
very
Yeah,
easy these days, that is.
yeah,
Yeah, especially the big hotels like the Travel Lodges, the Premier Inns. They're the ones that there's thousands of them everywhere. So you book a single room, they'll always give you a double or a twin. And obviously
yeah,
a double's no good, but if you get a twin and you got a friend that needs a bed, it's so much easier to do that. You just
yeah.
even just pass the key through the window now because they're
Yeah, there
so
were.
busy that
They
they
don't
don't
notice.
know.
Yeah, there were twin beds in there, so it was perfect.
And of course, I'm watching a guy on YouTube. He's from Wales. His name's Simon Wilson. He sneaks into all the big posh hotels, the big posh football matches, cricket grounds, concerts, airplanes. He's travelled around the world for free, lived everywhere for free, just as a YouTube sort of gimmick. Amazing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, when I was in Mexico, I stayed in a hostel, and it wasn't a bad one. They would serve you breakfast. So it was like a bed and breakfast almost. You'd come down and they'd have toast and eggs or a little bit of porridge, whatever. And it was pretty cheap. It was like $7 a night. And you would sleep in a bunk, either top or bottom, with someone. And I was in a quiet room for the first few days with only one bunk, so that was no sweat.
When it gets busy is the problem. In hostels, it's
Yeah, yeah.
not very nice.
When it got busier, I had to go into the other room, and there were two bunks, and I think at least two of the people snored. That was not fun. It kept you up. The snoring was so loud it kept you up.
And other noises. a lot of gas coming out of people. I had that in a hostel once. But
Well,
it
in Korea, they
teaches you
have
a lesson.
in,
Teaches you a lesson to not get yourself in that situation again.
yeah, in Korea, they have these places called a jinjilbang, and it's like a hot tub place, a kind of spa during the day, and then a lot of them stay overnight, and so they sleep on these mats. So my worst nightmare, sleeping in a jinjilbang all night with a bunch of snoring Korean men. Not a party. No, it was not fun. It was about 40 to 60 men sleeping on mats in this big room.
Yeah, I can imagine that one for sure. So just got
But having a nice jacuzzi and a kind of natural spring spa bath, almost worth the trouble, you know?
there's going to be a lot more problems with the world, isn't there? With our governments doing what they're doing, and our country is mad. We've got the worst government ever on record, I think. And it's supposed to be the Labour government that, helps people back into work, helps the homeless, help the poor. You know, they
Well,
had moral values years ago, but I have actually seen a, a video that I can't remember it all now because I was going to I do a couple of minutes, like the daily rant. I do a rant about something on another YouTube video, and I was going to rant about it because it's Tony Blair that started with the Fabian Society, and this guy, he was dead on. I think it was the Fabian Society that's caused all these problems we've got today, or at least some of them.
yeah, well, Fabian Society is a secret society that decided that Marx' Communist Manifesto was the wrong approach. A worldwide communist revolution of the proletariat, the workers of the world unite. No, they decided that a, a politics of gradualism would be more effective. And so they infiltrated all the socialist left parties. And if you watched, you'd find that the leftist parties were moving more and more left as the decades passed. So the Democratic Party in the United States, the Democrats may as well be called the Communist Party of the United States now. And the Liberal Party of Canada may as well be called the Communist Party of Canada. I've noticed that there is a Communist Party on the voting ballot now. For years and years, they had no following at all, so they weren't even listed on the ballot. But there's no need. The Liberal Party is the Communist Party.
Mm.
As for the NDP, they're just as communist as the Liberal Party is. They've gone radical left, both parties. They should form a coalition, and it would be the Communist Party of Canada.
That's kind of what happened to our Liberal Democrats and the Conservatives when they went for a couple of years sharing the government. It actually went really bad. And then Labour obviously took over in the end, got in again.
Yeah.
And then I think they got out, and then Conservatives got back in on their own. I don't know, Tim. The world's going mad, and we've got to get off this circle somehow and protect ourselves. But as we keep going round and round, it's it's getting a bit dizzy.
Yeah. Well, Ed Middleton should be a good mayor of London, and
Absolutely.
He'll reverse all of the damage that's been done to this point, and he'll give the police back their powers of arrest. And all of this grooming gang bullshit will be stopped because they'll arrest all the pedophiles and those that are guilty of statutory rape and put them away. And then after they've finished their prison term, they can get the boot right out of the country back to the shithole they came from. That is what has to be done, not just in Britain, in the United States and in Canada. We have to play hardball with these people. I'm not against Muslims. I have a few Muslim friends, but I am against Sharia law. Fuck that. That's not happening. It will not happen. There's not going to be Sharia law. Ed Middleton will reimpose Christian law. The traditional law, known as British common law, will be re-implemented. There will be no two-tier system, no double standards, no bullshit. Everyone will be subject to the same law. And in his interview with Liam, what's his name? Liam, the talk show host?
Yeah, I can't remember, but I think we're talking about the same guy.
Yeah, anyway, he was interviewed recently, and he explained that, Christian values, traditional British culture is a shelter, and it's, got the pillars of justice. And if you stay within those pillars and you've got the shelter, it provides rule of law and civil society so that we can all function and have a life. Discard it, and your whole society's in ruins, which it presently is. It's got to be restored.
Absolutely. We definitely want rid of Sadiq Khan. And this is it for this little segment, Tim. And if people want to like, share, comment, we'd love to hear your feedback. And yeah, God bless you all and have a lovely festive New Year.